Merry meet everyone, it is Spike with the Pagan Vlogs, and I'm doing a video response to one Wiccan High Priest's video called Teach Wicca Correctly, Please. And I wanted to make a few clarifications before I actually talk on this subject. First of all, right now this channel consists of me and only me, but this is a channel that I hope will become a collab channel of many different people throughout the pagan community, sharing things. That's my hope for the channel, but right now I'm okay with it being just me until I can find people who'd be interested and get that started. And before I do that, I gotta get more subscribers unless someone contacts me and lets me know they're interested. But, so I wanted to clarify that this is my opinion, and it does not necessarily reflect the opinions of other people on this channel. And the reason that I feel the need to clarify this is because I know myself, and I can get pretty riled up in these sorts of videos. And two, I wanted to clarify that nothing here is meant as disrespect. I simply get very intense into my debates and into my feelings on these things. So I want to clarify I don't mean anything as disrespect, or I don't mean anything as hateful. I simply get very interested into these sorts of arguments and debates and the like. So please don't misinterpret my passion for hatred. But I noticed a lot of things in this video that were quite ignorant, and I wanted to clarify something before I get into it that is actually related to my argument. And that is the definition of the term Wicca. Because it seems like above anything else, the biggest issue here is the definition of the term Wicca. And I'm of the opinion that the term Wicca applies to traditional Wicca, and that it applies to non-traditional and other sorts of Wicca that are practiced. And the reason that I feel this way is not as illogical as some traditionalists tend to think. Traditionalists tend to think that their Wicca is the only Wicca. Not all traditionalists, but many traditionalists think that Wicca only applies to Wicca such as Gardnerian, Alexandrian, and Wiccan paths of the sort. It only applies to people who are in a coven, who hold priesthood, because all people in the coven are considered priests and priestesses, and it only applies to those people. And I think that is entirely wrong. And that's not an emotional argument, even though at the beginning of my path it was, but that has become because Gardnerian Wicca does use the term Wicca. And some people think it is the first thing called Wicca, and that's why it is the true Wicca, is because Wicca comes from Gardnerian Wicca. And while that might have a lot of historical evidence backing it, and I'm not denying that, what I will say is that the term Wicca comes from the term Wiccae, which basically means witch, or it means something very close to witch. I'm sorry, I don't have my paper with me right now that has that information on it. But the term Wiccae means essentially witch. And so it's really not that much of a stretch to say that Wicca really is just witchcraft, in the sense that being a Wiccan, the only real requirement to being a Wiccan is that one practices witchcraft, that one is a witch. Now, there is a huge difference between saying that to be a Wiccan, one must be a witch, one must practice witchcraft. I don't know if I necessarily... Let me clarify. You don't necessarily have to practice witchcraft. You have to be a Wiccan, you should be some sort of witch. And I think what that could mean to the individual could be a lot of things. So if you don't do witchcraft in the same way I do, I think that simply having an intention and making that happen, simply asking, the gods to help you, that could be witchcraft. And if that's what you practice, I don't mean to say you're not a Wiccan. Especially if you do work with the Lord and Lady, and especially, yeah, I don't mean to tell you you're not a Wiccan by saying that. But the reason that I feel the need to clarify this is because there's a huge difference between traditional Wicca and non-traditional Wicca. And Wicca, in reference to the term Wicca, which simply means the practice of witchcraft. And yes, Wicca does get a lot of ideas from traditional Wicca. It does get, ideas such as the Lord and Lady. Now, I will admit, I'm not exactly certain as to the origin of the Lord and Lady, but I know that there have been a lot of presences similar to the Lord and Lady and gods and goddesses that have been out there similar to the Lord and Lady long before Gardner. Gardner simply put the goddesses and gods into those positions of the Lord and the Lady. I don't think that that's that original, guys. I'm sorry. But I don't think it's that original to put a goddess in terms of the Lady and a god in terms of the Lord. I really don't think that Gardner had these original ideas. And the fact is that ancient information, of gods and goddesses and the like, are things that I, as an eclectic pagan, and many people as eclectic pagans, draw from. And yes, there are all kinds of rules. For example, I will worship Ganesha, a Hindu god. But that doesn't mean that I follow all the rules of Hinduism. And the reason that I'm comfortable doing this, and the reason that eclectics are comfortable doing this sort of thing, is because the Ganesha that I am working with, the energy that is clearly present, is very different from the Ganesha that a very devout Hindu might be working with. Is it a different god entirely? Possibly, I don't know. But at least the energy is different. And I think that it is very wrong to say that the way that one interacts with the divine is more or less legitimate than the way another interacts with the divine. I think that that is arrogant, and I think that it is wrong. Now, to bash this girl for not holding your same Wiccan views, I think is entirely wrong. Now, I don't know if you intended to bash her, but, it sounded a lot like that. And some of the way you talked, and this is why I'm responding to you the way that I am, sounded very condescending. I was young once. I'm 18 years old. I don't know everything. I've only been on the path for a year. And so I'm willing to admit that I don't have all the knowledge in the world. I've been busy getting through school, so I don't know every single thing there is to know about witchcraft and paganism, but I'm learning, and I'm okay with that. And, people that I learn from are witches that have been in the path for many years. Many witches that I know who have been in the path for many years have been in the path longer than some traditionals. Yet, the traditionals still treat them with disrespect as if they don't know what they're talking about. Not all traditional Wiccans treat other people with disrespect. I don't mean to imply that. It's just that I knew someone who is a traditional Wiccan, and they disrespected someone that I consider a mentor, a teacher, who is a witch, who has been in the path for many years. And if I'm right, she's been in the path longer than this guy has. And if not longer than this guy has, then at least very close. But I believe it's longer. And he still acts like he knows everything. And granted, I have respected his path. I have asked him legitimate questions, and he has responded very rudely. But this individual is definitely not someone I would consider to be a representation of all traditional witches. But I wanted to clarify one other thing, is the way you follow Wicca seems very similar to the way that a Christian, an evangelical Christian, would follow Christianity or follow Christ. And I don't consider that necessarily, I don't have a problem with Christians, but I don't consider that necessarily a good thing. And what I mean by that is the idea that you need to spread the word of the Lord and Lady. That you need to spread the message. What message are you spreading? That people need to follow your exact same religion? Now, personally, I have a message to spread. I have a message of love and light that I wish to spread to everybody, but it doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of a pagan path. It doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of my personal path. In fact, my personal path probably wouldn't work for a lot of people. Some of it probably doesn't even work for me, and I'm on the way of discovering that. I am learning and discovering and figuring out what is right and what works for me. And I think that is a good thing. I think that is okay. But with that path that I am on as an individual, with that path that I am on personally, um, with that comes the fact that there are things that I don't know. There are things that I've yet to discover. And I think that goes for every single person, spiritual or not. I don't know. That one aunt that I saw at a picnic seemed to have everything figured out. But besides that, yeah, I actually stole that from a book. I'm not gonna lie. But I guess my point that I'm making here is that no one knows everything. Now, I think it's fine that you're a traditional Wiccan and that you want to teach traditional Wicca to those who are willing to hear, to those who want to hear. And if you want to teach devotion to the Lord and Lady, that's fine. Personally, I don't. I have devotion to the gods, but I do not serve the gods. And I want to be very clear here. I do not serve the gods. I respect the gods. I honor the gods. I work with the gods. I do not serve them. And the reason for this is I do not consider the gods to be greater than people or than us or than any creature in anything besides wisdom, knowledge, power. But in terms of value, I don't consider them to be higher up. And the way I look at it, at deity, is this. Deity as a whole, and I'm not talking about any one god, I'm talking about deity as a whole, the universal consciousness, the all, however you wish to describe it, encompasses everything. And while the gods may have a greater wisdom, a greater power, a greater knowledge, and a greater understanding, and that's why we respect them and teach them treat them the same way we do, the same way that we would a crone or a sage, a wise woman or a wise man who has been here a long time. In that same way, we honor the gods, but that doesn't mean they have any more or less value. They are part of the all. We are all part of the all. And that's how I view it. Not to push it. But if you want to teach traditional Wicca, teach traditional Wicca. I have no problem with it. In fact, maybe I might incorporate some things from traditional Wicca. And you and I can argue all day long about, whether other sorts of witchcraft work, whether other sorts are right, what is right and what is wrong to do, whether people need a specific sort of symbolism, if people need to work with different symbolism. I think that, oh, and here's my thoughts on the whole, I just want to clarify this really quick. On the whole, do you need tools? Yes and no. No, you don't need tools, but tools are extremely helpful. You don't need tools because the intention can be made and can be focused on without any tools. But tools help you channel your intention. Tools help you channel the intention out into the universe, but the tools you can use can be just your hands. Drawing a pentacle with my hands is witchcraft if I'm doing it for a purpose. And so that's why I specify that. But if you want to teach traditional witchcraft, teach it. I might even incorporate some things. But please don't bash the fact that there are other people who follow a different path. And please understand that the Wicca that you practice is very different than the Wicca that other people practice. And whether you call it Wicca or not is kind of irrelevant, because it's not that they're doing Wicca wrong. It's that you wouldn't call the thing that they're doing Wicca. But they have a legitimate reason for calling it that. And so, let's not be so silly as to argue over titles. Because really, isn't that all we're doing? Blessed be, everyone.